The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
Obviously, we over budgeted last year. I hate to say that I was right, but I was right. So.
And I think that that's what we need to look at more, is trying to get back to what we used to be, where our churches and our families took care of each other instead of relying on the state.
And we have no way to maintain control over the spending of this program, and it will be a disaster for this state long term.
But we have a whole gamut of kids whose parents would like to do something for them and they cannot.
I take our constitutional rights, the constitutional rights of my constituents, very seriously.
This is simply about putting it out of reach of young, innocent, vulnerable children and making our libraries and schools a safe place for them to go.
And I am increasingly frustrated that we cannot stop ourselves from drinking at the public trough.
He's sounding the alarm. He's saying if we don't address these issues, we potentially might have greater problems moving forward.
Mr. Speaker, no matter how you look at it, no matter how you boil this down, there is never any time that a parent's right to govern what their children see and what they're exposed to should ever be bypassed.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
We're supposed to be bottom-up government. We're supposed to be representing my citizens' ideas and your citizens' ideas, and we're supposed to be discussing them and debating them to come to a conclusion.
We need to start making Idaho first. We need to start making America first.
We need to be protecting our First Amendment rights, not inventing ways to slowly chip away at them.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
To debate against the motion, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman has the floor.
This bill would ban the display of university on city property. Idaho State University, Boise State, University of Idaho, other institutions across the state that have flags. We're pretty proud of Idaho State University in our town, and we fly their flag fairly often across our city property. The city of Pocatello also is a sister city to, and pardon my pronunciation here, Quanamagul in Burkina Faso, Africa. We do a humanitarian exchange with them. Members of the community have been there and built hospitals and done other things in that community. They've not been there for a few years because of the insurrection that's been going on in that portion of Africa. But we also are a sister city in a cultural exchange with Iwazi, I hate pronouncing this, Iwazimawa, Hokkaido, Japan. We have members of the community that raise funds privately and go there every other year. They take a tour of kids and adults. They tour that community in Japan. And on the off years, that community in Japan comes to Pocatello. And they look at Idaho and they look at America. And we have a display in our lobby at our city hall of kimonos and flags.
And they come to Idaho and they see the pride flag flying everywhere. Welcome, everybody. Let's keep this debate up over here. This is Cheatham. This is, okay, what's happening? Good morning. Good morning. H96. This is the bill brought by Representative Scott that will say that, hey, only the American flag and the Idaho flag and maybe the POW flag, I think, can fly at government offices. All this business going on around here with the pride flag and this and that other flag, all these different flags being displayed is a disgrace. And Cheatham stood up there to say, well, we sometimes like to fly the Vandals flag or the flag from our sister city over in Korea or Japan. Well, you know what? Sorry, done. That's it. They ruined it, and now we got to go back to just flying the American flag. What a tragedy! What a tragedy! Let's keep listening to this a little bit here inside the House.
Discussion on that, and what we're trying to do is get back to the basics. The American flag, the government flag of the entity, If we want to come back with trailer bills to allow other countries or that, those can be debates on their own. As you'll find, they can be divisive. Someone that likes Canada someone that might not like Canada for other reasons, or someone might flee a country that other people like and some people don't. So we want to get away from the divisiveness. We want to get away from government promoting different agendas. And so this is a good start. You're welcome to bring up other legislation to allow sister cities as we go down, but we have to get back to the basics and just the American flag, and that's what this bill aims to do.
Lady 34.
Mr. Speaker, to gently debate the bill. I respect the good lady's intention with providing an emphasis and highlighting the need to have the American flag displayed with pride. I agree with that sentiment. Where I'm afraid this legislation falls short is that in the process, it undercuts our American values of wanting to promote democracy by demoting other flags from other entities or other friendly nations or organizations which aspire to be America. They want to have the values that we have. Now, if there are flags that represent values or organizations that you have disagreements with, that is a reasonable point to consider.
What a bizarre take.
With which this bill paints, it leaves a lot of friendly organizations and entities on the sidelines, and I believe undercuts what the American flag stands for. I'd encourage your red light.
Further debate on the motion.
That's a bizarre take.
Gentleman 14.
We should fly the flag of Japan since they aspire to be us.
Gentleman has the floor.
This particular picture really resonated.
Okay, let's they're going to debate this bill for a little bit. Let's switch over to the Senate, folks. Just a reminder, we are live on YouTube, Rumble, X, many places on X, couple places on X, Facebook. So we got viewers all over the place. We welcome you. We're glad you're here. And it's so good to see you. Or it's so good that you can see us. I can't see you yet, so we're still working on that. But Senator Foreman out of District 6 is presenting Senate Bill 1038. This is I believe this is the medical, basically like a medical freedom act. So let's listen to a little bit of his debate as we get Brian Ullman set in the wings, and we'll cut to him here in just a moment. But let's listen to Ullman.
Between its 196 member nations. This would be a legal agreement, and this agreement could take the form of a treaty, a regulation, or a resolution. Now, in May of 2024, Idaho Attorney General Labrador joined 21 other attorneys general in writing a letter to President Biden opposing the WHO's plan to rewrite the organization's international health regulations and create a new pandemic treaty. The text of the letter claimed the WHO was attempting to undermine states' authority and imperil constitutionally guaranteed freedoms while attempting to vest power in its own director general. This, the letter claimed, would restrict our citizens' rights to freedom of speech, privacy, and movement across borders and informed consent. Now, President Trump recently withdrew the United States from membership in the WHO. The U.S. was paying more money into the WHO than any other nation. The 2025 WHO assessment on the United States was $261 million. However, the U.S. withdrawal from the WHO appeared to be primarily driven by the high fee being charged.
Yes,
WHO has reportedly agreed to greatly reduce the U.S. assessment.
All right. Senator Foreman's going to keep this debate going over in the House. The flag bill is still being debated. But who else is in the House is Brian Ullman. Brian, good to see you this morning. I think you're all set up over there. I know you've been having a little connection problems, but we can see you. I hope we can hear you. How you doing?
Well, I can hear you. I hope you can hear me. I'm doing well here at the Capitol in a quiet corner while they're doing their debates in the House and the Senate. And yeah, it's exciting times.
Excellent. Well, let's get you in there. But I kind of wanted to share some stuff that happened early this morning in the House Ways and Means Committee. But first, some folks may not know exactly what the House Ways and Means Committee is. I mean, we have the Education Committee, we have the local tax and revenue committee, and those things are pretty self-explanatory. But when it comes to a Ways and Means Committee, at least here in the state of Idaho, because they can mean different things in other states, and particularly at the federal level, what is the Ways and Means Committee here in Idaho?
So the House Ways and Means Committee is not a regular committee that meets every day. It is a privileged committee, though, which means that even after the deadline, new bills can be introduced as RSs for print hearings, which is what it seems they use it for. And it's made up of the leadership of both the majority and the minority, both Republicans and Democrats. So the House Majority Leader, House Assistant Majority Leader, the caucus chair, and then on the other side, the Democrat versions of those as well, with the chairman being Representative Jeff Ehlers. So the Republicans have a one-vote majority. So whatever Republican leadership wants to do, they can do it with the Ways and Means Committee as long as they're all on the same page. So sometimes special bills or controversial bills will get routed through that committee, or in this case, because we're past the deadline for RSs to be introduced in any committee, they'll use it to introduce bills that the leadership wants to get through, like this morning.
Right, yeah, and we have a couple of clips this morning. Representative Barbara Ehart has a bill, I believe it's House Bill 190, which would give protections to females from men entering private quarters of females all over the place. And I think she did a slight adjustment to the bill that's already been printed. And so she wanted to show up this early this morning. It meets very early, I think 7:15.
7:15 Mountain Time.
Yeah, 7:15 Mountain Time, exactly. But here's how it went for Representative Ehart today.
And what you have before you essentially is a piece of an RS to replace House Bill 190 with about 4 word changes. So I'm hoping to get it through, up, and over so that it can be heard on Friday where it has a placeholding. So any introduction here would be appreciated. And I'm not actually happy to be here at this early time in the morning. Is this the only time you guys meet?
We're early here. Representative Monks.
Thank you, Chairman. This is the committee that works. I move to introduce RS 32407.
Very good. Committee, any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, motion is to introduce RS 32407. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
All
Any
right.
opposed by nay?
And that bill went through, so that was a good sign. Not needed too much comment on that one, but the big news out of this morning was I thought it was kind of funny for her to admit how early the the committee was. The committee meets, but Allman, the launch bill got a shot across the bow this morning, or the launch program. It's no longer a bill, even though I continue to keep calling it that. Give us a little bit of background on what launch is before we dive into this, what Representative Josh Tanner wants to do.
So launch is a grant. It was the governor's signature piece of legislation in the 2023 session that would give $8,000 to high school graduates for them to use for certain careers that are decided to be in demand by a workforce development council, of which most of the people are appointed by the governor. So it's made up of political figures as well as business leaders. And so they decide, okay, well, we're going to need more of this career or that career. And so we'll designate those as in demand. So graduating students can apply for this $8,000 grant. They can go take it to a college for certain classes. They can go take it to a trade school, lineman school, for example, or they can just go to, use it for workforce training. There was a lot of opposition, obviously. Conservatives felt that it was essentially government-free college, which is usually a kind of a Democrat position. And the Democrats actually here in Idaho support this. This is one of their top priorities, is protecting the launch grant, which is ironic since it was a Republican governor's endeavor. And it also informs the school choice debate because it is essentially a voucher program, which is what Democrats rail against. And it actually allows them to take that money to private religious organizations such as BYU Idaho. So that's kind of the background of the debate over it, and a lot
Ryan,
of conservatives want to end it.
Hold on. It's such a great point that you just succinctly put all together. This is basically a school voucher program that also includes private religious schools, but it's for post K through 12 education. Let me repeat that, folks. This is basically a voucher program, which the Democrats have always been against, which all these pro-education people have always been against. It's a voucher program for post-high school graduates to use in higher education, including money going to private religious institutions. We just want to make sure we have that clear. All right, Brian. So what happened this
ironic.
morning? Yeah.
So a lot of conservatives have wanted to do something about this program. The governor wants to keep going. He asks each year for a little bit more money for it. But Representative Tanner had an interesting idea this morning in Ways and Means.
That's right. So let's and just to set this up, Representative Tanner is also on the Workforce Development Council, which is in charge of overseeing the launch program itself. It runs through the Workforce Development Council. So let's listen to Tanner.
Before you is RS 31985. This deals with the launch program. And this was Senate Bill 1167 from 2023. Within that bill, it does have a sunset date in there that was for 2029. This is just increasing that, bringing that forward to the 2026. So there's two different mechanisms in there. Within it, it actually cuts out the $80 million that goes to the in-demand career field to just align with the early for the sunsetting of it. Happy to stand for any questions.
Okay. Representative Keelys.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Tanner, so a student that starts in the launch program.
That's enough. Yeah, he Achilles asks about like what happens if someone's already enrolled in the program before it sunsets and everything. And essentially, basically, if you get in on time, you can finish. If you don't, you're out. So you're not going to get the rest of your tuition. So that being said, boom. I mean, that's great, right? I mean, he wants to sunset this entire program from 2029 all the way to 2026. It passes it passed the Ways and Means Committee, so it's headed to the floor. What do you think? So this is always going to be the big fight. I mean, I have a feeling it might do well in the House. That being said, when it gets to the Senate, it's fair game again. What's your take on this?
When the launch bill back in 2023 came to the House, the governor and his surrogates were lobbying heavily for it, and it only passed by one vote. It was very close. And then in the Senate, it passed by a couple of votes. So I think there is some desire for people to do something about it. However, everybody's probably a little bit nervous about going after something like this. Anytime there's free money being handed out, the people who receive that free money are very supportive of it and are jealous of it and don't want anyone to get rid of it. But putting the sunset date, that's a very interesting way to do it, because the original launch bill essentially had a 5-year term. It would expire by 2029, and then the legislature would have to decide, is this worth continuing? This moves that date up. So if this passes, then next year's legislature, which is a statewide election year, remember, the governor is up for re-election and all the statewide officers, as well as every legislator, is up for re-election. It will force them to have the debate at that time. Should we continue this program or should we let it go?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, great analysis as always. Real quickly though, after that committee, Representative Josh Tanner headed over to JFAC, and there was some interest. So today in JFAC, the representatives from the governor's office were there to take questions regarding their budget, and there were a lot of questions that were put out there. Some great questions from Glenita Zeiderveld, Senator Zeiderveld, Representative Price, and so forth. But Representative Josh Tanner feels like, he alludes to something that Representative Price said, but they kind of stumbles upon something that we may have to like investigate a little bit further here. Some moving of funds that don't necessarily show up in Transparent Idaho. And when we're all taking a look at what's happening nationally with Elon Musk and Doge, we're all acutely aware now of the possibility that the federal government isn't the only place where money just gets thrown around willy-nilly to never be seen again. But here's a little bit of what Tanner said this morning in the Joint Finance and Appropriation Committee.
I think I was going to follow up more on what Representative Price has said. I'd kind of looked into the similar areas, but I think it's probably better for Director Wolf if she had a chance to look at that or analyze that and give us some feedback. There were multiple different transfers that were done back from other agencies to the Department of the Governor. We had $95,000 that was transferred from the Department of Health and Welfare, $55,000 that was transferred from IDOC, $50,000 was transferred from the Department of Insurance, and then $50,000 that was transferred from DFN back to the governor. What was more curious to me is that the timing of those transfers. So 3 of the transfers were done in August just shortly after their budget was done. So it seemed very interesting to me because I can follow back. I've looked through some of the ones that have been done in the past, which are ones that are like the AG's office, for instance. They do a lot of it, but I can go back and I can look how many hours, every detailed thing of what they actually have done. These ones look like they were just transferred at the beginning, like they were paying for their staff. And then the more curious one was the one that was done on the June 6th from DH.
Okay, let's stop it there for a second. Let's stop it there for a second. So he's noticing that there are funds being transferred back to the governor's office, and he alludes to a little bit later that unless that didn't happen, the governor's office would be in the red. They'd be underwater. And it happens in a big chunk. It's not like they're paying for something, that sometimes departments will have to reimburse other departments and all that sort of thing for time. But it seems as though like that there's just a big chunk that's happening in order to make the office whole over there. Is that what I'm getting? Did you catch any of this that goes? And there was a lot more of this, folks, which maybe we'll just post separately. But what was your take on some of this? Do we have Brian?
JFAC this morning. And that's basically it. So Representative Tanner says that he's noticed all these transfers because all these agencies within the state government, they're appropriated money from JFAC and from the legislature, but often then they transfer money back and forth. And in this case, he noticed a bunch of transfers last June, which is right at the deadline of the budget when we leave one fiscal year and move to the next. And he was just wondering what's going on with these. Why are all these other agencies giving money, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 to the office, the executive office of the governor? I saw on the B-roll here, Senator Jim Woodward, he seemed to complain a little bit about that line of questioning, suggesting that this isn't the job of JFAC to go through transaction by transaction. And if citizens are concerned, they can go to Transparent Idaho and look for themselves. Representative Tanner pointed out, wait a second, I'm not seeing some of these transactions on Transparent Idaho. And besides, they do these transfers all the time. And usually there's a note with them saying, this is what it's for. But these transfers to the governor's office, they don't have that note. So I think it seems reasonable for a member of the budget setting committee to ask what the office is doing here. Lori Wolf, the administrator of the Office of Financial, Department of Financial Management, Office of Financial Management, the budget department, said that there's a lot of them where the governor's office will send some of their employees to work with other agencies, such as when they have an interim director or a vacancy or something and they need a little bit of assistance, and then they'll be reimbursed for that. And Representative Tanner said, yeah, that's great, but still a lot of these are not saying what they were for, and they were all done at kind of the same time. So it is an interesting question that I think deserves a lot more scrutiny, because who really knows what's going on? It could just be completely benign, or they could be doing some weird stuff with our money.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, in the spirit of Doge, like we had mentioned, everybody's like paying attention to the money and all this. So like, this is one aspect of it. I want to get into that a little bit with you here before you go. But I think this is a big deal. I mean, I think when you have your basically your budget committee here, going through the numbers, having questions on wondering where the money is going. Like these are exactly the questions that we are trying to ask when we send these people to Boise, when you elect them to watch over your money. And when someone like Senator Woodward, and he did, we'll play that clip later if we have time, where he just says, look, you could just look at, if you want to look at line by line, we shouldn't be doing it here. You should just go on Transparent Idaho. And Josh is like, I did. Tanner's like, I did do that. And that's why I have these questions, you dumbass, you dummy. I mean, it's just, it irks me so much. But thank God we've got folks like Representative Tanner there, Representative Price, Senator Zeiderveld. I mean, they're watching these numbers like a hawk, and it is fantastic to see. Okay. We want to let you go, but Brian, but tell us a little bit about this article that you're composing here on Doge and what that means for Idaho and what we can do here.
Yeah. So Doge, Department of Government Efficiency, it started as a meme, and now it's Elon Musk and his team of Zoomer geniuses are tearing through the federal bureaucracy and finding so much waste and fraud and things that are just being spent on nonsense. And President Trump has given him a wide latitude to recommend that a lot of these programs just be completely cut, and that is fantastic. And we're watching it here in Idaho, saying we want that here. But it's also become a buzzword. Everybody says this is a Doge bill, this is a Doge initiative, because it's the new political buzzword. Everyone wants to get on board and bask in that glory. But really, what is going on? Obviously, we want to see the budget cut. We don't have an executive here in Idaho who's given anybody wide leeway to go through and just recommend cuts here and there. That would probably be great. So we have to rely on our legislature and JFAC and such. And I think there's two sides to it. We need to cut through some of the waste in the budget, but there's also a lot of streamlining of code and rules that is actually going on very quietly. I'm going to be putting together a list of bills that are going in that direction. For example, just this morning, Representative Jordan Redmond presented a bill that would cut 150 sections of code out of our state laws regarding related to the Department of Health and Welfare. And that's very much that's a good thing. It's these codes always get bloated and bigger and have mission creep. So cutting that's a good thing. It's something that doesn't get a lot of attention, and I just want to look through and see exactly how much is actually happening. What level of Doge are we on here?
Yes. What level of Doge? How much more can we do? Let's keep it going. Excellent. All right, Allman. Well, folks, make sure you follow Brian. Brian, where can we follow you and make sure that? And when does this article hit?
Assuming nothing jumps out at me today, I'll try and have it done by this afternoon or this evening at gemstatechronicle.com, and also follow me as always at GemStateBrian on Twitter.
Yes. All right, Allman, get at it out there, man. Watch out, Capitol. Here he comes. All right, see you tomorrow. All right, folks, very good. Some good news. Let's see if we can throw up the tally on that flag bill. There it is, H96. Go ahead full screen so I can read some of the no's on here, because there are quite a few nays, 17 nays on this flag bill. This would say that at our government offices, at our government buildings, that the American flag, the Idaho state flag, and the maybe the POW MIA flag, those are the only ones that can fly. If you want to add in, as Representative Scott said later on, if you want to add in, flying a flag from your sister city over in South Korea, or the University of Idaho flag, then maybe we can come back later and add that. But let's start from square one. Everybody out of the pool. Everybody out of the pool. Take your pride flags, your BLM flags, your MAGA flags. I don't think anybody's ever flown a MAGA flag outside a government building. Take all those in. And everybody out of the pool. Okay, sorry, I digress, but I want to look at that chart again. I want to look at that chart again. Okay, so all the Democrats, of course, right, because they're defending their allies. Birch, Achilles. Did you know Birch was a Democrat? Achilles, Egbert. So Manwaring, McCann, Raybould, Nelson. Man, what are they defending? What are they defending? I don't know. Yes, McCann. I saw that comment come in. Throw that comment up. That's a good one. Yeah. Anyway, all right, folks, we're going to take a break. The House has adjourned for the day, or recessed for the day. I don't know whatever the right term is, but they're done on the floor. So they'll be back tomorrow. The Senate is still in session. They are debating House Bill 7, which I think is some fines for marijuana. Pretty sure that's what that is. But we do expect the mask bill to be up today, depending upon how long these debates go right before it. But the mask bill may be up today, H32, which is a great news. If it passes today, we've got a big, huge announcement for you. Which I don't know. I could probably mention it in a little bit. It's not like it's it's not like it's meant to be a spoiler alert or something. It's just we got something cool to unveil. It's because it's not ready yet. Maybe that's why. Let's take a break. We'll be right back.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government and what we were tasked to do.
Idaho is the dirt under your fingernails after an honest day's work. Idaho is the hug around your neck when your daughter spells her first word. Idaho is the written word of the law, steadfast and impartial, guarding liberty for all. Idaho is the family rifle passed down, a legacy of protection and the right to stand firm. Idaho is the echo of your own voice, unshaken and free, standing tall among a world silenced. Idaho is the home that's built to weather storms, not empty wallets. Idaho is the quiet trust between a patient and healer, unbroken and sacred. Idaho is the hymn carried by the Spirit, gathering neighbors together in faith and purpose. Idaho is the laughter around a campfire, a family's bond growing stronger with every word. Idaho is the pioneer's will, firm and clear. We govern ourselves, free and unbound. Idaho is what America was. Let's keep it that way. Ask your legislator to sign the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge to preserve our shared values. We ride together.
Yeah, folks, I'm going to be in Idaho Falls, in Ammon, Idaho, specifically, on Saturday, February 22nd at the Patriot Roundtable. I'll be, looks like they've labeled me as a special guest. What does it take to run in Idaho? Not only to run in Idaho, but to win elections in Idaho. Yeah, I'll be talking about that. I'll be talking about a lot more, hanging out with some good folks. Looks like there's going to be some good food. I love that. There's a suggested donation of $20 at the door. That doesn't go to me, folks. That does not go to me. It goes to your patriots out there putting on this event. So if you're out in that area, head on out. Doors are at 6. 6:30's food. And then we'll get rolling with some discussion at 7. So very, very happy to be doing that. Okay. All right, folks. Yeah, so the House is done. The Senate is still going. We'll pay attention to see if that mask bill comes up. If it does, we'll jump over to it for a little bit if it gets to be contentious. I don't think so, though. I think this thing has a good chance of getting through. It's so exciting. So exciting. Because, again, this isn't just about the masks, but it is, right? But it's also a signal to your local governments that you just can't do this stuff anymore. I pound it over and over and over again. You know what I mean? Like, you cannot violate individual rights. Just because you're a proponent of local control, you have the emphasis on control rather than just local. You know, we're a community. We don't gag each other. We don't mask each other's children and send them off into a plexiglass land of nonsense. Okay? That's not what we do here. Thank you. All right. Programming note, we should have Fred Birnbaum from the Idaho Freedom Foundation here in about 10 minutes or so. He'll be here. I want to ask him a little bit about what happened in JFAC this morning. And then, of course, just budgets in general, what they're looking like, because we're going to start to see some votes on actual budgets coming through. And so we want to get a preview of that. That's always a big deal. Okay, but first, yesterday, some very important things yesterday that happened in the Senate Health and Welfare Committee. Senator Brandon Shippey has a bill, Senate Bill 1036, and it's called the Doug Cameron Act. And basically what this would do would put a pause. It would put a moratorium on allowing gene therapy, mRNA gene therapy shots to be administered in Idaho. And the reason for this is because there had been so many adverse reactions to the mRNA gene therapy that was prescribed or administered to fight off the virus. And so we want to. All he's looking for is a pause. And so yesterday, there wasn't exactly a full hearing. It was called what they call an informational hearing. So there was no debate between the committee members. There was no motions made. It was simply a way to gather information from so many people across Idaho who've been affected by this. And so there was some word that this hearing wasn't going to happen, but I think that some wires got mixed up or whatever. But anyway, there was a lot of people that were brought in testify. There were people there that were there to testify remotely and as well as obviously in person. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you a couple of clips from that, just to kind of get you up to speed, and then we'll share with you what we'll do with the entire hearing afterwards. But let's just set up here a bit of what we're going to be here. This is Senator Brandon Shippey yesterday in the Senate Health and Welfare Committee.
Madam Chair and committee, I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to bring this legislation before you. Is Senate Bill 1036. This legislation is titled the Doug Cameron Act. It ensures a moratorium on the administration by any route or modality of any gene therapy product for any infectious disease indication. And so this legislation is here for one reason and one reason only. This was not a brainchild of myself. As many of you know, this is not my area of expertise, but a constituent of mine brought this to me. She is a registered nurse, and she cares very much about injured Idahoans who have been injured by the COVID vaccination. And this good constituent is here today, and she has many connections with some really qualified experts in various disciplines, and through the efforts of many, we were able to draft this legislation. And so what we're going to do is we have a presentation. We do have some experts scheduled to be testifying online. And what I'm going to do is turn now my time over to them to start their testimony, their expert witness on this subject. And then I will, I guess, come back after all the presentations, all the testimonies, and to finish on my end. So,
okay, very good. So if you caught that, what he was doing was he had gathered a lot of people to it wasn't necessarily like a public hearing where you show up and you get your 2 minutes. He actually assembled people to provide all of this information to the committee. One of those people was someone you may have heard, Dr. Peter McCullough, who was set up to testify remotely via video. There was this lengthy pause because the system wasn't working and they couldn't get it right and they couldn't get Peter McCullough on the video, blah, blah, blah. So they eventually got him by phone through the cell phone onto that. So again, we'll have more on that in a minute. We're not going to play Peter McCullough in a moment, but who was there was Idaho's own Dr. Ryan Cole. And so we have Dr. Ryan Cole's testimony here. Yes, there you are. Someone just in the comments just said, was Ryan Cole there? Well, yes, he is. There's live television for you. Go for it.
Is yours. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, senators on the committee. I'm Dr. Ryan Cole. I'm a board-certified anatomic and clinical pathologist representing myself. I live in District 19, and I'm grateful to be here. I think we're missing the forest for the trees here. We're talking about COVID and what happened and the shot. But remember, as Shakespeare said, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. A gene therapy by any other name is still a gene therapy. This is a genetic product. This is not a vaccine. It's been mislabeled. It did not stop transmission. It did not stop disease. It did not stop acquisition of disease. It did not stop this disease. There are plenty of papers out there, as have been mentioned already. What we've missed is the product that went out to market was a bait and switch by Pfizer. It was grown in these broths that my colleague talked about and contaminated with a known carcinogenic monkey virus, SV40. 6 countries, independent laboratories, peer-reviewed now, have proven that these are adulterated, contaminated products. Excess DNA has been found in them up to 437 times the FDA allowed amount. Anything that exceeds those regulatory standards is out of bounds. Yet our regulators have failed us. We as Idaho can set an example for the nation that we're not going to put up with an out of trust federal government that keeps ignoring the financial interests that are out and about. We don't do ice pick lobotomies anymore. We don't leach anymore. We don't overuse opioids anymore. We don't use mercury anymore. There's a reason, because those products were dangerous and science was wrong. The science has settled as censorship. Plain and simple, these are dangerous products, not just the COVID. These are synthetic RNAs. And I'll conclude with this. Science and medicine dies when inquiry dies. We can do a lot of things scientifically. Knowledge is great, but knowledge without wisdom is folly, and wisdom comes from delayed gratification. These are dangerous products that need to be removed from the market, and we don't need to allow Idahoans. This is about our children, your children, my children, the future. We don't need Idahoans to be guinea pigs for a synthetic product. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Some excellent points there, as always, from Dr. Ryan Cole. I think it was particularly effective to point out treatments that we used to do back in the day that have since proven to be completely unsafe. And so as we continue here with the sort of the guinea pig moment with mRNA stuff, we don't really know. And so this is a bill that will continue. All right, we have one final, we have to play this one. We have one final clip here from Doug Cameron himself, the person who's been named on this bill, and then I'll offer you a little bit of pushback on this bill from the other side of the coin, just food for thought. So let's listen to Doug Cameron.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for being with us today. Please identify yourself for the record, and the time is yours.
My name is Doug Cameron. I was vaccine injured April 2021, the Johnson & Johnson gene therapy COVID vaccine. I received my vaccine at work during work. 10 days later, I was paralyzed from the diaphragm down, and I spent 105 days in hospitals and rehab centers in Idaho and Utah. And I'm willing to show all my medical records and images. Combined medical bills and out-of-pocket expenses have exceeded $2 million, and I'm willing to show all my medical bills and out-of-pocket payments, and it continues to grow. Typical vaccine development timeline generally takes between 5 and 15 years, and sometimes to assess whether vaccine is safe and effective in clinical trials, we have not reached the first 5 years of this worldwide gene therapy vaccine trial. Everybody who got a COVID vaccine is in the trial. The data has not been forthcoming, and I, for one, cannot stand by and watch our young people be vaccinated and tested with gene therapy and their unknown long-term side effects. Known side effects include myocarditis, pericarditis, male and female reproductive issues, paralysis such as mine, and many, many more. The purpose of this bill, S1036, is to put a pause on human gene therapy products for the safety of Idaho citizens. Human gene therapy is still in its infancy. The pause is necessary, and Idaho can be and should be leading the charge. I politely ask you to put this up for a vote and pass this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron.
Wow, powerful stuff there from Mr. Doug Cameron. You can see the passion there, and of course, obviously, our heart goes out to anybody affected by this. Really tragic. And so again, what this bill does, and there were many people. I mean, there were other victims that spoke, other people's families. That's his wife spoke after that. What we're going to do, folks, is on Friday, we're going to play that entire hearing so that way you can see all of it. I think it's important to have that out there for you to share with people and do what you will with it. A couple of the arguments on the other side of the issue here, of course, is the idea that if you recall, during President Trump's first term, he was very proud of something called right to try. And personally speaking, I'm a big fan of the concept of right to try, meaning when there are experimental things out there that aren't approved yet, but are trying to do something like save someone's life from a disease or something, that the person who is on a path to early death should have the right to try something brand new, because if they don't, they're going to die anyway. And so they're willing to say, "Hey, I'll try out this drug, or I'll try out this new product to see if if it'll save my life." And if it doesn't, at least you get to have some data, because I'm already going to die anyway. So that's the concept behind right to try. I don't necessarily know if this bill interferes with the right to try, because this is just a moratorium, and the promise of the the promises of the mRNA gene therapy, at least in the sense of the COVID virus, was completely oversold in terms of its what it could do to help save lives, or just stop you from getting the virus, stop you from transmitting the virus. There's nothing, folks, if we're still on YouTube, I'll be surprised at this point. That being said, this again is just a moratorium. So I think with this early technology here, that maybe this might be the right path forward, at least to help get the word out there that this stuff is not as safe and effective as it may seem. And so we're going to see a lot more come out, obviously, from the federal level now that RFK is in his position. So we'll see about that. But interesting, good debates happening on that front. All right, folks. I believe we have we've got Fred here. Fantastic. Right on the cue. I'm a little late. He's early. He's on time. You can always count on Fred to be where he needs to be. Fred, good to see you, my friend.
Good afternoon. It's afternoon here in Boise. I'm happy to be on your show again, Matt.
Yeah, it's great to see you. I know it's been. I know you're always busy. We're all busy this time of year, but you especially, because you dive into all of these numbers. I had a couple things I wanted to ask you today, and then I'll turn the time over to you. But there were some interesting conversations happening in JFAC this morning. Senator Zeiderveld had some questions, Representative Price, and then Josh Tanner kind of got into the weeds a little bit about some money that may or may not be moving around that's not on Transparent Idaho and that sort of thing. Did you catch any of that? And if you did?
I did not, but I can make one point with respect to JFAC.
Sure.
And it doesn't tie to this.
And maybe you could can you put your screen down a little bit further? There we go. You're a good looking guy, man. We want to make sure people see you. There it is.
So what's happening for your listeners is the Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee is now looking at the line items, the enhancement budgets. And so they're asking questions because JFAC has passed the maintenance budgets, and that's about $12.8 billion of spending. The governor is asking for $14.4. That difference, $1.6 billion, is up for discussion. And the problem with some of the sites like Transparent Idaho, which sounds like a great idea, they're not the most user friendly. And then we had a new enterprise resource planning system. That's the fancy techie word. And it's called Luma, and it had a lot of bugs in it. Basically, they were transitioning all of these systems onto a new platform, and it hasn't worked out very well. It's cost more, delivered less, and the real issue is the data integrity. And so I don't know where all that ends up, but I think that's one of the reasons people are asking a lot of questions.
Yeah, that makes sense, and sadly, not surprising. New systems, new things that government just can't get right. Okay, so then let's talk about the budgets, because we heard a lot of hoopla at the beginning. With the governor coming out saying that he was hoping to cut $100 billion or $100 million, was it? And then the leadership comes out and said that we want to do $400 million. I mean, we could probably do 500 or 600 million. What's your take on where we're headed this year with these budgets as they start to really get in there and start passing them?
Well, first you got to define what is a cut. And to me, a cut is a reduction from the current amount. A cut is not a reduction in the rate of increase. And Congress has played those games for years, and the result is $36.2 trillion in debt. If you appropriated, which Idaho did, $13.9 billion for the current fiscal year 25, and you appropriate more than that this year, you're not cutting. You can say, well, I reduced the rate of the increase, and that's an accurate statement, but it's not a cut. So there's not going to be an overall cut, meaning they're not going to appropriate less. We'd like them to, perhaps, than they did last year. So the question is, how much does it go up? And that's what the debate is about. Does it go from the 13.9 to 14.4 billion, or something less? And I think Representative Tanner and others on JFAC are trying to get a lower number, but it won't actually be a cut. And last year they didn't cut the governor's request. Some people might have thought they did, but ultimately the 13.9 billion that was appropriated was more than the governor asked for originally, because they added some very hefty transportation funds in at the end.
Okay, so I'm with you on that. So it's not we're not reducing the budget from the year before. We're just reducing the amount that we increase. When you think of the fact that our state, they keep saying our state is growing, the population is increasing, is that a reason to increase certain services, or are you saying, or can you look at it yourself just from a purely fiscal, hawk, and just say, sure, we may need to increase over here, but we certainly don't need this entire department or this amount of waste that's happening over on this side? Is that kind of like what you'd like to see?
So it's a multi-part answer. The short answer is, I think you could argue if the state is growing, and Idaho's top 1 or top 2 population growth by percentage states, that you need more infrastructure, for example, right? Roads and bridges have to be repaired or widened. So there's an infrastructure argument. There's not necessarily an argument that the entirety of government has to grow. Does the welfare office have to grow, for example? I mean, I hope not. We don't want everyone moving in here going on welfare.
Right.
So we reject the argument that because the state is growing in population, that the totality of government has to grow. That doesn't seem to make sense. Does the public television budget have to increase just because there are more people here? Well, one, maybe we shouldn't even be funding public television. So we reject the notion that more bodies means that the whole of government must grow. And if you look at Idaho's budget specifically, where it's really growing, which is going to be the topic of our discussion today, or at least part of it, is Medicaid. The Medicaid ask for the next fiscal year outweighs all the entire increases of every other agency. And I want your listeners to understand that tomorrow, House Bill 138, a Medicaid reform bill, will be debated on the House floor. Now, I can't guarantee it. I've just been told that. I would call it a very high likelihood. I mean, they have a lot of bills, but I believe it will be debated tomorrow on the House floor. And it's very important, to the extent that your listeners want to weigh in, that they tell their legislators, please support House Bill 138 to reform Medicaid.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We had it on our watch list today to see if they would get to it. So yeah, we anticipated hopefully it'll pop up tomorrow. Can you give us the hard number here? What is the ask for next year if we were to leave Medicaid expansion alone? Do you know because originally of course the argument when it was Medicaid expansion was brought to Idaho through the ballot initiative, it was sold to us as a $300 million or $400 million program, and it's well over $1 billion. Isn't that right, Fred?
Yes. So I actually have the numbers right here.
Hey, look at that.
So the total ask for Medicaid, or I should say what was appropriated in 25 for all Medicaid, was $4.7 billion. The ask for 26 is 526. So call it 4.7 to about 5.3, nearly 600 million. It's 550-ish. The expansion Medicaid budget is now current year $1.12 billion, and the ask next year for 26 is 1.36 billion. So wow. Completely out of control. And to put that in perspective, and I did this in my presentation before the committee, the first full year of expansion, the original appropriation was $400 million in 21. 5 years later, it's now $1.36 billion. That's the ask. That's over a 200% increase in those 5 years.
That's incredible.
What's even more incredible is if you look at the enrollment numbers, and obviously enrollment in the future is a projection, right? We can only make an estimate. The enrollment surged during COVID, but it's now stabilized to pre-COVID levels. Yet the spending continues to go up. So the spending per enrollee has gone from, and these are actual costs, basically this is a reimbursement program, meaning that the state pays providers to cover Medicaid enrollees. That has more than doubled from about 6,600, and the projection next year is over 12,000. So it's an out of control program. It's the biggest budget driver. It has to be tackled, or we can't tackle spending.
Okay, and then let's just sum this up here. Where does that money come from? Now, obviously it comes from you and me, but literally, where does that money come from? And if we put the guardrails on it and we drop that down, where will that money go? Do we get it back? Where does it go?
Great question. So one of the ways they sold Medicaid expansion, or I should say the way the Obama administration proposed and presented it, was that if you give Medicaid to able-bodied childless adults, we will pay 100% of the cost, we being the feds. And most states said this is great. The Idaho legislature said no. Luke Mayville got a ballot initiative, and it was sold without really telling people the costs, how much they would explode, which I just spoke to. So it was initially funded 100% by the feds, and now it's 90% federal, 10% state money. So when you hear it's 1.1 billion, that means about 110 million state and roughly $1 billion federal. And a lot of people, even Republicans, think, well, this is free federal money, we should just take it. And that is one of the reasons that Medicaid is expanded to roughly 40 states, the expansion piece. I don't mean the basic. So your listeners need to understand, this bill does not impact the elderly, individuals with disabilities, children, pregnant women, able-bodied parents and caretakers, people on long-term care, children's health insurance. This bill only impacts childless, able-bodied adults. And what the bill says, it has a number of conditions, reform conditions like work requirements and other things. If they're not met, then expansion is repealed. And the reason that's necessary is, as I told you, the cost went from 400 million to they're projected 1.36 billion in 5 years. And here's another thing that's interesting. We got some data from DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, and Musk put this on the website, on X, and we picked it off of X. Between Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid and other health programs, Medicaid has grown the most. It has grown from, and they have numbers from fiscal 19 to 24. Federal fiscal year is off, it's not the same fiscal year. It's offset a little to ours. So it's a 5-year equivalent, right? On real terms, inflation adjusted, Social Security is up 16.6%, Medicare 11.9%, Medicaid and related health programs up 30.7%. Wow. So it is a budget buster. So all this thing about, well, this is free federal money. No, folks, Medicaid is one of the reasons that the federal debt is over $36 trillion. Yeah. And Idaho can be the first state that does major reform with House Bill 138. Yeah. It is a model piece of legislation. Like I said, virtually certain will be debated on the floor tomorrow. It really is must pass because it has grown so much. It threatens every other program, meaning roads and schools and colleges and things. To the extent you believe those should be funded, Medicaid will crowd out those programs. And again, this is just going after the able-bodied population, not the elderly, not the kids, not the disabled. This is just targeted toward childless, able-bodied adults.
Yeah. Don't fall for those scare tactics on your local news. It's absolutely preposterous. And also, Fred, last time I checked, I fill out two tax forms, one for the IRS and one for the state of Idaho. And the IRS is always the larger of the two that I'm sending my money to. So this whole idea that it's federal money, if I hear one more person say that, I think I might explode. It's
Well,
our
don't
money.
do that live.
Let's not. Okay, Fred, thank you so much for coming on. Have you written a piece on the Medicaid expansion yet? Can we direct anybody to some of the information that you have here?
Well, I've written a lot of pieces on it, and you can go to our website and just type in Medicaid in the search bar. So if you go to the idahofreedom.org, and there'll be a search bar, and type in the word Medicaid, you'll see a lot of articles that we've written that explain this in detail. But again, the bill is House Bill 138, and your legislators will be debating and voting tomorrow. This is one of the most significant and important pieces of legislation for conservatives to vote on and vote for.
And vote for. Yes, great. All right, Fred. Well, thank you so much, everybody. IdahoFreedom.org. Do what Fred says. Do what Fred says. We'll see you next time, Fred. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
All right. Very good, folks. Wow. Yeah, let's get you guys motivated and activated out there. We were watching it on the list here, and we'll make sure to have that going, blasting out there. We'll do a signal boost later today on it, because it is very, very much needed. Very much needed in today's world to get rid of that. So let's do that. Folks, it's the bottom of the hour here. We've been on for an hour. We are still asking you to call Governor Little and reinstate Major David Worley. If you don't know that story, go look back in the archive and check out our interview with the Liberty Counsel, which is David's the Major's attorney here. He has been put on paid leave because basically because he's a Christian and had some beliefs that somebody else disagreed with and complained about, and it had nothing to do with him being on duty. It was all stuff he was doing in his private life. So call the governor at that number there. That would be fantastic. And this Medicaid thing, House Bill 138, call your representatives and tell them to support that bill. Here's how you can easily do it if you want to do it right now. You go to standings.citizensallianceidaho.org, standings.citizensalliance.org. Type in your address, and it'll shuffle the board so that your representatives are right at the top. Click on them. You'll find their email. You'll find their phone number, and give them a call. Send them an email and tell them to support House Bill 138. Also, you'll notice too, I'm happy to report now that Kootenai County, which I think is the third largest county in Idaho, Kootenai County is a diamond county, a full diamond county. Every single legislator who covers Kootenai County has signed our pledge and is in good standing. And that is some great news. That just happened recently, folks. So that's good. We're still moving along. We're still signing folks up to that pledge, supporting and preserving our shared values for you and for me, for them, for their families. All right, everybody. We'll be back here tomorrow. Leave your message. 208-402-4915. We want to hear your rant. We want to hear a praise. If you want to just go off on something good or bad, please do so there. That's pretty awesome. 208-402-4915 is where you can leave your message. You can also shoot us an email at signal@citizensallianceidaho.org. Follow me on X at TrueMattEdwards. Follow Citizens Alliance at citizens_Idaho. Just go to our link tree. Do we have our link tree at the bottom too? Well, I think this music's just been playing. Is it gonna go off? I don't know. How do we do this, guys? Do you want me to just keep playing the music and then you'll just throw something up? Let's do that.
To the in-laws.
This bill, I think, puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.